what I'm thinking about tonight, what I'd like to do is we're getting ready for the fall. You know, we're getting into fall. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but we're getting into fall, hopefully sooner than later. So some of the things I want to talk about and just kind of go over is what should we be doing this time of year? What type of work can we be doing? How should we be preparing? You're always, season of, you should be preparing for the next season, getting yourself ready. So fall time, we're kind of getting ready for that winter dormancy. What I'd like to really do with this is, I'm just going to kind of fumble around up here a little bit. I want you guys to be involved too. If you've got questions about anything related to whatever it is, but let's hone in on that fall care, that fall, what should we be doing at this time of year. Let's talk about. That's kind of my goal, is to get you prepared for the fall season. And then again, once we get done, we'll kind of go over all these displays. I'm really proud of the St. Louis group. I keep coming back here time and time again because they're a really good group of people. You'll have a club that I'm very impressed with. Seeing all the turnout of 2 award winners, from you guys here, that's great. You should be picking all these guys' brains. Everybody, I love when clubs really get together and feels like a good group of people. I like working with those clubs. This is one of those clubs. It really kind of filters out there from the study group, some of the private days I work with. There's a lot of good stuff going on. So I'm really proud of you guys. You're all doing some great work. Keep it up. Keep elevating. All right, so a little bit, we're getting into that fall time of year. So what are some things that what's going on in y'all's garden? How are things looking? I know it feels really hot still. Are we finding that leaves are turning yet? Are we getting into fall dormancy yet? A little bit?
A little bit.
Yep. Yep. So what are some things we kind of should be doing to prepare for this transition? So we're getting out of that hot summer. We've kind of gone through, a lot of times we'll find that June, July, decandled some stuff. We're doing some cutback. July, August seems to be a little bit of a dormant time. August, September, starting to get September, October. Trees are a little bit, they've woken up again. They're starting to some trees have done a little bit more growth. Some trees are slowing down. What do y'all see in your garden that's going on right now? What are some things we should be thinking about as we start approaching, October, November, winter dormancy? Yes, Bill?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Let's do it.
I've got a Japanese maple.
Yep.
And it got burnt really bad with the sun.
Yeah.
And the leaves fell off 3 weeks ago. It's blooming.
It's pushing another flush out.
Pushing another flush.
I have the exact same experience with one.
Do I have to do anything special?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Japanese maples, let's start with that topic. And specifically with that, I had exact same experience as you. Had a Japanese maple that I took for sale at the Nationals in Rochester beginning of September. Inside, it's very poorly cooled in there, and it was just, if you were there, it was hot and nasty. Am I right?
Yeah, man.
It was nasty. So I actually had a Japanese maple that completely crisped out, lost all its leaves. I tried, I was keeping it wet, had plenty of water. It just, with the, just how humid it was in there and everything, it just lost all its leaves. Took it home. That next week started pushing a whole new flush of growth. So that's going to be really, really important as you go on for the next couple months. So in my area, we're already starting to cool down a little bit. Starting to get some more milder temperatures, whereas you guys, looking at the forecast, maybe next week starting to cool down a little bit, but you're still fairly warm. When you have a situation like that where Japanese maple has that flush so late in the season, the issue you're going to be thinking about is, if we start getting into October and November, before that new stuff can harden off, because it's essentially like a fall or a spring flush that's happening again, those new tender shoots are very, very vulnerable to the frost. So my plan with that particular tree is, when I'm going to start paying attention to the weather, and if I see temperatures getting down into the 40s, 30s, that's going to be a little bit later, but definitely the 40s, 50s, 40s, I'm going to start bringing that in at night. So I'm going to put it in my studio, make sure it doesn't get too cool. I don't want it to get confused to all of a sudden new flush of growth, almost like a springtime, to then going into that fall, winter weather. So if you have a tree like that, you need to bring it in, most likely on a nightly basis, depending on the temperature. So you start getting below 50s, bring it in. Bring it into the garage, protecting it from frost, protecting it from getting really, really cold. And you might actually have to extend that And now you're basically going to have to treat that like a spring season to let the tree go through its natural process of flushing out that growth, hardening off, and then adjusting it back to the winter time where you introduce it to a little bit of cold temperatures so it can go into that dormancy. You might find that that's going to be late December, January before that happens. So it's a really tricky situation when you have stuff like that happens, but you need to basically baby that thing as much as you can. Does that make sense?
What if we cut that foliage off? What would that do?
So I have not experimented with that.
Okay.
That might be something I'll try. I actually had 2 maples that did the exact same thing. I might try one of them. You know, once that stuff hardens off, go ahead and kind of defoliate it, put it outside, let it get back into that winter feel, and then the other one just kind of let it do its thing until it's hardened off, feels good. Then I might take it outside and see if it naturally will turn those leaves rather than cutting them off. So you got 2 different situations. No matter what, you got to protect that. As soon as it gets out there with that new growth and gets down into those 30 temperatures, it can easily kill the tree. Start killing off that tender growth and start really hurting the tree.
So if you cut off some of the new growth, would there be enough time to set buds for next spring?
So that's part of the issue with that. Ideally, it already has had a couple flushes, or at least one strong flush this year. Now it's kind of doing, we can go in the June time and completely defoliate a Japanese maple and get a whole new flush. It'll set buds. We're doing that with this particular instance. We're doing that very late in the year. Ideally, yes, it will set buds. So, by babying a little bit, that's where you're, kind of protecting those buds that are set. Again, I will probably try a little bit cutting off and see what happens versus, just letting it kind of sit there for a while before I take it back outside. But, babying it is the most important thing. It's a really, tricky situation to have when trees do that. That also...
What's your winter storage?
Do what?
What's your winter storage?
My winter storage...
Greenhouse?
So, that specific one, no, it won't be a greenhouse. It'll be my studio where I have a split heater, and I'm keeping that a mini split. So I'm keeping that studio at least 60 plus degrees. Now, in that particular situation, if I were to put it in a hoop house, it's not going to be much different from, if outside the hoop house it's 30 degrees, inside it's, high 30s. So I don't want it in that. I want it specifically, not even in a garage, because the garage is going to get cold too. So you might be bringing that tree in your house if you have that situation. So it's a really tricky situation. That's, we want to really, specifically with Japanese maples, avoid late defoliations in the year because you run into situations like this.
Does it give any allergies inside the house?
Any
Allergies?
you should. So with bonsai, they're outdoor trees. We want them outdoors all the time. In this specific instance, you're really babying it. It's a really special instance that this is happening. It's not going to like it a whole lot because it's not the same as outside, but it's going to be much better for it in a more warmer environment than going into the cold environment with that tender growth on it. So in general, absolutely we want all bonsai except tropical trees outside all year long. This is a very specific case that it's okay to be inside, and you're probably not going to have much issues. If you run into that getting really later into the December month and it's been inside for quite a while, you might be thinking about bugs or insects a problem, or insects drawn to it because it's inside that time of year. So that could be an issue, but it should be all right if you kind of baby it a little bit. So let's talk about Japanese maples then while we're on the subject. So Japanese maples, they are... What do we know about Japanese maples? Anything?
Japan.
Oh, that's right. What else?
The foliage and the leaf size gets really small.
Yeah. How many flushes of growth do we typically have on Japanese maples?
1.5.
1.5.
1.5, 2.
Ideally, if we can get it, 2 would be great. But all right, so Japanese maples, they're essentially a single flush tree. I treat them as a single flush deciduous tree. But younger varieties, younger trees, you can get away with completely defoliating them each year and having a good flush of growth. Once you start getting to a really refined specimen tree, I really hesitate ever doing any complete defoliations on them. I'll do partial defoliations. That's because they're not quite strong. They tend to be a little bit weaker the older they get. So with Japanese maples, is there any particular problems that we might think about when we're talking about, again, we're talking about fall, kind of preparing for that fall season, also preparing for winter/spring. With Japanese maples, anything we need to think about as far as cutting them back, as far as preparing for those issues? Diseases?
Yeah, open wounds.
What else? What about as far as what do we do with stuff like this? Can we wait till spring? Should we cut them back now?
That's a good question.
Do you have space?
Do what?
I said, that's why you're here, you'll tell us.
Well, I'm helping. You need to. I'm not going to give you all the answers. This is part of being bonsai. This is knowledge that you should have in your brain that you need to pull
It
out. of your
depends on
brain.
what you're doing,
That was one
right?
thing.
If you're letting this one run to thicken that trunk, you leave it alone.
Okay. How do you know when to stop it from thickening?
When it's as thick as you want it to be.
See, there we go. Use our brain. Use our brain a little bit, guys. So with Japanese maples, what I'm trying to get you to get to is what it. Do what? Abscission. What do we do about it? Can we cut a Japanese maple back in the early spring?
No,
Why not?
it's gonna bleed.
Okay, so what does that tell you about the fall work on a Japanese maple?
Should probably cut it back.
Probably cut it back. Why is that? Important time. We can't do it in the spring. So Japanese maples, one of the most important times to be working on Japanese maples is that fall time. Once Japanese maples go into dormancy and go through that winter, in the springtime, before they start waking up, typically on deciduous trees, we like to late winter, as they're waking up in the spring, we use that as an opportunity to cut them back, start pushing back for ramification, for interior branches. If you do that on a Japanese maple before it's woken up, it'll bleed all over the place and kill the tree. So it's very important in the fall time to do that cutback. That's the best time to get in there, cut them back. That's going to start activating buds in it'll start setting buds over the winter time. So Japanese maples, fall time work, extremely important. Yes, sir.
Should you wait for the leaves to drop before?
Great question.
Yeah.
So the way that I treat that is, and in general with all deciduous trees, as we start getting into that fall time, as the weather starts cueing these trees in to start going into dormancy, you don't want to wait till the trees have lost all their leaves. You want to hit that special spot right as leaves are changing, right as they're starting to shut down. So you need to pay attention to your trees, pay attention to the environment around you. As you start seeing leaves change, it can be difficult. Are you showing your tree? Are you wanting to really enjoy that fall color on your tree? That's going to dictate, can you cut it back? Again, on Japanese maples, if you're showing that tree, if you're really wanting to show off that leaf color in the fall time, it's going to be much more difficult to cut it back because we want to wait for those leaves to start changing colors. Longer and longer it goes, the more beautiful those colors are. So you get late into the winter, late into the fall time, they change all those colors, it kind of gets too late to cut them back. So once they've lost their leaves, that's a little bit too late to cut Japanese maples back. If you're doing so, you need to leave stubs. And so it starts depending on how big of a cut are you making. Are you doing a trunk chop? If you're doing a trunk chop, you need to leave much more space to account for that dieback over winter. If you're just cutting back simple little branches, you can be a little bit more aggressive in cutting them back, leaving smaller nubs. So it really does dictate, or depends on how is it changing. Again, most deciduous trees, as they're in that process of changing colors, that's kind of the perfect time to be cutting them back. Yes, sir.
On a tree that size, how big of a branch would you cut back on?
So I would be okay this time basically cutting back anything on this tree. It's still awake. Part of the process when we're talking about cutting it back in the fall time, you want to think about when I cut this back, whatever's left over, how much time does it have to kind of callus over and at least start to protect that cut you've made. So the larger the cut, the more you should leave for a dieback. The smaller the cut, it's probably going to heal over a little bit quicker. So on a tree at this stage right now, I'd be okay with being pretty aggressive with it, cutting it back pretty good, knowing that it still has the rest of October into November to start healing over a little bit.
So with that cutback, can I wire branches in place? Can I set the bones?
Good question. So when we're talking about wiring deciduous trees, what are some issues you would think about heading into the wintertime? Question you guys.
Killing the branch
Why might we kill a branch?
because the wire gets colder than the branch.
Happened to me last year.
That's right, yeah.
I did an
Okay.
experiment
No,
with,
that's right, yep.
with bald cypress last year. I did 20 that I wired and left it all winter, and 20 that I didn't,
Yep.
and all 20 that I wired died.
Yep. So when we start talking about we're getting into the cold months, we're putting wire on trees. We know that wired metal, it's going to make the branch a little bit colder. We also know as we're moving these branches, they're getting micro cracks on them. So if it doesn't have time to kind of heal those over, you really run the risk of killing off branches with that wiring. So as far as wiring goes in the fall time, I like to do it a little bit sooner than later. And it all depends on how aggressive you want to be with that wiring. Going to be a little bit more aggressive, try to do it sooner than later. If you're getting into the end of October, beginning of November, try to do simple, more generic wiring, not as heavy of bending on it. And then if you have a tree that you pushed it a little bit, you need to protect it. So don't let it get down to those freezing temperatures. Don't let it be outside in the wind, so the wind can kind of get on the branches and make them cold.
And I'm stealing all those cuts, right? Every one I cut.
Every single
down
one.
to-
So
down to-
you'll get some, if I were to cut the end of this right here, probably not going to put any cut
Okay.
paste on it.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're cutting major stuff, anything, basically from this size down, I'm going to put cut paste on it.
The orange
Yeah.
stuff or the orange stuff or the brown stuff?
So cut paste, put cut paste on no matter what.
Alright.
But so the orange cut paste, everybody, have y'all used some of the orange cut paste? So there's a particular type of orange cut paste that has a, has a hormone in it. We often use that for fruiting and flowering trees to prevent diseases from getting into it. We also have just the gray cut paste, liquid cut paste. That's a really good one to use. Once you start getting larger and larger cuts, bigger than your thumb, you might start putting the putty on it. So putty, often if y'all are getting the Japanese putty cut paste, have a green top, white top. Green top is for conifers. The white top is for deciduous trees. And that's the white top has a hormone to help accelerate, or no, the green one has a hormone to help accelerate that healing on conifer trees. Yep. So really important. Again, I would say the most important tree, if you guys have Japanese maples, that's probably the one of the most important ones as far as that fall cutback goes that you should really consider. Again, you do it in the springtime, late winter, early spring, you make a cut on these branches, they start bleeding out, and they, on a cellular level, don't have the ability to heal over at that time of year because they haven't really woken up. So they'll just start, the roots will suck up water and it'll just start pushing out the branches. I've seen many branches, in some cases trees die from cutting them back too early. So again, fall cutback on Japanese maples is very, very important. Perfect time to do it basically from here on out. Yes, ma'am.
When you cut the actual branch itself, does it have to be at a certain angle, up or down?
So my generic philosophy with that is you want to make it completely flat. So it doesn't matter if it's upright like this or if it's down like this, make the cut flat. When you start cutting at an angle, then on cellular level, it's going to die back quicker on this side. If you make this cut here, it's going to die back quicker here than it is here. So it's going to cause that dieback to kind of die at an angle. When you cut it flat, the whole thing kind of dies back normally and starts to heal over more normally. Now there's a couple different cases where you change that a little bit, but for a generic cut, flat cuts.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to confirm, did I hear correctly that you said any deciduous trees you should cut now?
Any deciduous trees, it is a good time to cut them back to prepare them for the springtime. So cut back now on deciduous trees. They'll start setting buds for the next year. In some cases, again, with Japanese maples, you cut them back in the springtime. They don't have the energy right away when they wake up to set buds back further. They kind of spend the fall, and winter time setting those buds. I tend to be on most deciduous trees less aggressive right now during the fall time. As far as that cutback, I'm often going back toward a silhouette rather in the springtime. Once the trees have woken up, once I see buds on deciduous trees start to swell and I can see there's a lot of activity, I'm okay with on most of the other deciduous trees being more aggressive on that cutback. So you kind of set yourself up now for generic cutback, often for profile, and in the springtime as they start to wake up, a little bit more structural cutback at that time. Does that make sense, everybody?
On all the Japanese maples.
That's for deciduous trees in general. In general. But again, Japanese maples, it's a cutback now, and I don't do anything to them until mid-spring, early summer.
When you said sometimes you'll, on more refined trees, you do partial defoliation, are you talking about like taking one of the two leaves?
That's exactly right. So that's something that once in the springtime, Japanese maples open up, where on, depending again, case-by-case scenario, if we're getting toward a refined tree, pinching them back as they're growing out so they don't extend too much. Then once all that's happened, everything's hardened off, we start getting late spring, early summer, then I'll do a partial defoliation out of one pair of all those to kind of cutting them back to open it up a little bit. That's a late May, June, typically when I do that type of work.
And that's some advice about the Japanese maple bleeding apply to any of our native maples that I know a lot of them.
Let's see. Sugar maple, that might be kind of closer, yeah.
They're known for bleeding in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the amber maples, I think they probably are a little bit more like tridents. I'd probably say sugar, but in general, nothing I would say that, nothing I've worked with, I've had any issues like a Japanese maple. Everything, all of our native deciduous, our native maples, I tend more closely to a trident rather than a Japanese maple. Japanese maples seem to be just the kind of their own case scenario.
So if you wanted another branch on that tree somewhere,
All right, great question right there. That's another thing we might want to think about when we're cutting back our branches. Do we need to throw this thing around and save it for a thread graft? So if you need to save it for thread graft, please don't cut that branch back because you're not going to get it in the springtime that quickly. Great point. So absolutely, one of the things, you should always obviously have a plan whenever you're doing anything with your tree. So in this case, I know Nate's got a perfect plan and knows exactly what he's doing with all these extensions.
definitely.
So, at this time of year, in some cases, you might need to think, do I have the ability to store it with a big branch like this? In some cases, maybe the tree's bigger, branches are a lot longer. Do I have the ability to store it? Is it going to be an issue if I cut it back slightly to just be able to store it, just to get it into wintertime and not really mess up? The reason I was growing this often is to heal over, large cuts on the top of the tree, to increase girth on the trunk. If you run into an issue, you're like, I just can't put this in my cold storage or wherever I'm putting it for the winter with a branch like this. Well, can I cut it halfway and then next year let that take off? Or do I need to completely cut it back because the wound is healed over to my liking and it's ready to do that? So, those are just kind of case-by-case scenarios. Obviously, yes, if we're growing out branches lower on the branch to thicken up our main branches, letting them grow. If we're saving them for whips to thread graft later on in the year, obviously saving those.
Do you ascribe to the length is better for girth than?
Yeah, 100%. So when we're growing out something like this, if I'm trying to thicken up trunks, if I'm trying to heal over scars, absolutely. Typically I want just one singular branch growing. I don't want multiple singular branches growing all over the place. We just want that one. That's really going to draw the energy up. The more branches you have coming off of this, the more it divides it and doesn't really, pull on the lower areas as much. So if you're trying to thicken up a trunk, growing out a trunk, healing scars, let just one whip grow. Yes, sir.
Bald cypress, conifer, and deciduous.
Bald cypress. They went there. Goodness gracious. All right, say that again. Sorry. Bald cypress mean you have issues.
I got a bunch that have been growing out with
Yeah.
big whips on them. And
Yeah.
I was planning on just hacking them back once they start.
Bald cypress, I'd say hack them back. They're so aggressive and so strong. Often you don't need that. You can basically kind of regrow those whips fairly quickly. They have so many growth spurts in them all throughout the spring, summertime. I wouldn't. Bald cypress is typically I would be chopping them back at this time of year pretty hard, if not throwing them away, but it's okay.
They grow well here.
They do grow very. They grow well in my environment too, and I still don't like it. So that's particular. That's about as much as I want to say, unless there's any other questions specifically on Japanese maples.
So you're talking about wound cleanup? Do you have a favorite way of cleaning up Japanese maples to make nice smooth wounds?
Yes. Oh, great question there. So again, that gets back to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cleaning up wounds for Japanese maples, is there a favorite technique?
So that gets back a little bit to timing on that. So if you're starting to, if you've made a chop earlier in the year and you're wanting to cut back and make that a more beautiful wound, the earlier you do it, late summer, early fall, the more aggressive you can be with that. As we, again, at this point, at this time of year, kind of looking at the forecast, knowing, we're, almost mid-October, I probably would not be doing any major wound cleanup or chopping back any major chops to make them beautiful right now. I'd wait until mid-spring. Really, honestly, mid-spring is about the best time to do more major wound cleanups on Japanese maples. Just because, again, you want a Japanese maple, you want them really growing strong, really rolling, before all on cellular level, they like to heal over much quicker. This time of year, we're really starting to slow down, especially on these guys, and knowing that in the spring, we can't do that early, either wait or earlier in the fall time.
So the thought would be is you cut it down now, you have that stump, you allow that stump to go through the winter time, get to that middle spring, late spring, and then do the cleanup of that.
Perfect, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And again, that's a little bit, that gets back to all this, how hard are you cutting them back? If it's a chunkier branch, leave more of a stub. Smaller branches, you can be a little bit more aggressive on it this time of year.
This cutback talk is mostly for trees that are close to refinement, or at least you have an idea what you're doing. If you have a tiny tree that you're trying to grow out, you just leave them alone this time of year, right?
Yes, yeah.
How about fertilizing?
Okay, great switch subject there. Fertilizing. What type of fertilizing are we doing in general? What type of fertilizer do you guys use? Biogold? Fish emulsion?
You mean right now, or?
In general.
Right now, I'm using the one with
Cakes?
288 is what I'm using right now.
You're doing what? Say that again?
288.
Okay. Okay. Is that a liquid fertilizer?
It's a liquid
Okay.
fertilizer.
You're doing 2 a day? Twice a day?
No, it's 288. That's the nitrogen NPK.
You're doing 2 a day? Like, good for you, man. I need apprentices. Come on.
I have 2 8 jobs already.
So, a lot of organics, it sounds like. People using liquid fertilizer currently as well?
Yeah.
Okay, fish emulsion, seaweed. We're using chemical fertilizers, Osmocote, stuff like that. Chemicals, okay.
Not now.
Not now?
Not now.
Why's that?
Pretty much want some heavy growth during the summers and spring, so now's not a great time for that.
Exactly right.
What now, what did you say?
More Osmocote, that's going to be really strong growth. Osmocote also works with temperature. So the hotter it is, it releases it. The colder it gets, it tends not to release it. So we're getting to that time of year where Osmocote just is not going to be very effective.
Gotcha. Do you ever grind down your Osmocote?
I do not know.
You know?
I don't use Osmocote, honestly, a whole lot. It's very strong. I would be okay with more on my nursery material stock that I'm just growing out, field growing, a little bit of that stuff. Once I get to a nicer refined bonsai, I don't like using Osmocote.
What do you use? Yeah, what do you use?
My nitrogen,
So, what?
my nitrogen number is low. Like
Why is that? Right now, this time of year?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I don't want to push anything with the nitrogen number.
What do we want to push right now?
The other two numbers,
Yep.
P and
P and K. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yes.
Exactly.
So the middle one is more than the last one?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's right. So we're getting into that transition, going into fall, winter dormancy. What we want to do with our fertilizing, and now is a very important time to fertilize. But what we want to do is push the P and the K to start giving the roots more energy, helping them kind of build up that in the root system and the tree system to make it over winter, and in springtime once they wake up to kind of really jumpstart it. Yes, sir.
Brand new. I know what nitrogen is. What's P and K?
That's a great question. Would somebody want to answer that?
Potassium, phosphorus.
Phosphorus and potassium. Yeah, that's right. So NPK. So when we
Up, down, all around.
up, down, and all around.
NPK.
NPK. Up, down, all around. So with trees throughout the growing season, we want different strengths of the NPK depending on what the tree's doing. Early in the springtime, we're growing a lot of green growth on it. We want a lot of nitrogen. And then each one has a different time of the year you kind of use it. As we're heading to the fall, we're not hoping for as much green growth as much as root growth, interior growth. So that's why we kind of alter those this time of year. But it's really important this time of year. So I use a lot of Biogold. Biogold's one of my favorite fertilizers. It's a little bit expensive, but I've worked with a lot of different types of fertilizer. It's the best one I've encountered for its overall effectiveness and I tend to use it on more. I actually use it on everything, which is crazy. But if you only had to use it on certain things, I would use it on things that are kind of that midway area of development, heading toward really refined trees. Earlier on, we can kind of get away with blood meal, bone meal, different types of combinations, organic fertilizers earlier in the stage of the bonsai's life. Once you start getting more refined trees, I like using the BioGold a lot. It's really, really good fertilizer.
So do you use BioGold year-round?
Yes, I use it year-round.
Putting it in baskets or bags or something?
So a little bit of everything. I put it in. For me, the most part, if you got a basket like this, I'm just dropping in some pieces in there. On a tree like this, I'd probably put 10 pieces of BioGold on it, and they're little triangular pieces. If I'm doing it on a tree like this, I might do it on the baskets because when I water it, it might fall off. So I use the baskets just depending on what the root surface looks like. If it's something that's gonna be harder for those pieces just sit on there, every time I water it, it rains, it falls off, then I'll use baskets.
I was thinking about the raccoons trying to eat it.
Right, so this I will, in my experience so far with the BioGold, I have never had problems with raccoons, with squirrels. It has no smell to it. It doesn't break down. A lot of organics we can use, they'll get maggots under it once it kind of starts rotting away. I've never had issues with the BioGold doing that, so another reason I really like the BioGold. But the BioGold itself tends to last about 60 days, its effectiveness. So about 60 days, we find that the NPK starts to really, has been used up. The nitrogen goes pretty quick. Then the P and the K, they start to break down 30 days later. So throughout the growing season, I am typically applying my fertilizer, my BioGold. I wait about 30 days, do a light addition application to it, and I continue that all throughout the year. So right now, at this time of year, we essentially have about 2 months, a little less than 2 months before we're really probably going to hit dormancy. So right now is probably the most important fertilizing time to get us through that winter. You have another about 60 days or so, a little bit less as we're going on, but for that fertilizer to break down and the tree to start using it. So right now, a very important time to use it. So I just recently, in my garden, did my last application of the BioGold, but we also use a liquid fertilizer. And we use a number of different types. There's a lot of different ones out there on the market. I wouldn't say necessarily I found one that's head and shoulders above the rest of them. Fish emulsion, kelp help. There's one I've been using specifically this year. I get on Amazon, a granular, mix it up with water. It's called Grow. I think it's Raw Grow. Really good one. And they actually have 3 different types. One that's meant for the springtime, one that's meant for the summer, one that's meant for the fall. We're now transitioning into that fall fertilizing with that. Liquid fertilizer, we do that about once a week. That's a lot, but it really makes a big difference. Say that again?
What was that brand called?
So it's called, I believe, Raw, R-A-W, Grow.
Raw Grow?
Yeah. Just search that and then something's going to pop up on there. And
So what numbers are you, this is October, are we looking for a 0, 10, 10?
So again, yes, definitely the nitrogen is not as important at this, so it's going to be a much lower number. Now, each fertilizer out there has a different NPK value on it. I tend to, at this point, look for more lower nitrogen and the P and the K slightly higher. So I would be okay with a 2, 6, 6 right now.
That's
something
what I
around
said
there.
a minute ago. I said 288.
288, yeah, exactly. So that's
0, 10, 10.
0, 10, 10 would be fine too, yes, yeah. And again, it really gets down, the more you get into bonsai, really those things get much more specific. What stage is my tree in? What particular, is it a field growing tree? Is it a really fine tree? Is it a white pine versus a black pine versus deciduous? I don't really worry about that as much as I probably should, but you are getting toward those numbers. The P and the K should be higher toward the fall time.
And we can do that on our field-grown trees as well?
Correct, yes. Yep. Yes, sir.
Some tree kicked off most of its leaves already.
Beach?
No, hotworm.
Okay, yeah, yep.
Any sense in fertilizing it?
Yeah, so again, I really, a lot of people will think that once the tree loses its leaves, fall time, winter time, it's done. It's still on, the roots will start to grow, continue to grow throughout this year. So yes, I think it's important to fertilize up, again, my organics fertilize, knowing it's going to last me 60 days. That basically gets me to the end of November. I feel good. I will continue doing liquid fertilizer up until about Thanksgiving. So I think it's a good idea. Now,
I knew it was the right choice.
there you go. See, that's why I love this club. Very smart. So yeah, fertilizing really, really important this time of year. Again, doing both organic, doing liquid. Yes, sir.
How about trace elements, like magnesium?
Say that again.
Trace
Trace
elements.
elements?
Trace elements. So one of the things I do often when we do our liquid fertilizer, we're also using, you can search this one on Amazon as well. It is Bonsai Pro. I believe Bonsai now owns that. Dynagrow. Yeah, Dynagrow Bonsai Pro has really good trace elements in it. That's a good one I'll use periodically when I do my liquid. So throughout the year, it's good to do those trace elements. You should always be adding that into them. You're not going to necessarily get that as much with the organic, so I supplement that on its own when I do the liquid fertilizing.
You know, just in the winter all year round.
All year round.
Seaweed with iron is good too.
Yes. Yep.
How do you feel about Sprint?
Sprint?
Yeah.
The carrier?
Spring.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Sprint.
Iron, EDTA.
Okay.
A bunch of other
Okay.
traces.
So one of the things I will, kind of this conversation is getting to is I don't have a necessary, like, this is the answer. It's more of, micronutrients are necessary. Fertilizing is necessary, both organic and liquid. So it's really up to you to, check your NPK. Try to get it balanced depending on the time of year, depending on the specific tree. It's not in a mean way. I don't care what you use. Definitely use something. I've had a couple people come to me and like, I've been waiting to talk to you. Should I be using this? And it's the middle of summer. I'm like, what have you been using? Like, nothing. I've been waiting to talk to you. It's like, just use something. You got to use something. So I can't tell you off the top of my head anything I've used to not use.
Sure, but
So-
I mean, that's the flip side of it is, it's probably fine.
Correct. Yeah. That's kind of the way I do bonsai. It's probably gonna be just fine. If not, the tree's gonna tell you pretty quickly. Then you start figuring out those things, right?
So fertilizing strategy for tropicals like
tropical. This guy's rough. No.
And
Tropical.
I'm
Okay.
guessing
Yeah.
you're not preparing it for anything for like a winter. So
Correct.
you calm down a little bit to expect it to go inside, have a different environment.
Correct.
But still kind of similar.
Yeah, still, so I would suggest then with tropicals, for those of you who do tropicals, you probably noticed that often in the fall time, starting to get cold, we're going to transition those tropicals to the indoor environments. Often when that happens, they kind of get hit. Often ficuses will lose all their leaves. They kind of get shocked going into that. So if you're preparing for that, I would say with tropicals specifically, don't go as hard with fertilizing until they get back into that new environment and kind of start growing again. So it could stress them out, or it can not be as effective if they're kind of going into that dormancy or that weird transition period from the normal fall that they're encountering back into a new climate that we're giving it for tropicals throughout the winter. So wait till it gets inside and kind of adjust slightly, and then you're back on the normal schedule with that. Good question.
Thank you.
I got one.
Yes, sir.
What are they spraying trops? What are you guys doing with tropicals right now to prepare them to
The
come
little
in?
granulars, the anti-mosquito stuff is what I've been putting in mine.
A systemic? That's a systemic?
It's a systemic, yeah.
So no neem oil or anything, because you got scale and bugs and everything.
I should. I have done it.
I started putting the granular on mine like a month and a half
Yeah.
ago.
Saddle soap.
Saxide soap?
Yeah.
If you bring those tropicals in too, what I do is use Super Thrive.
Okay. Give it.
Before I'm gonna bring it in.
That kind of gives it a little transition, helps it kind of jumpstart that transition. Yeah.
Stops,
Yeah.
or can help stop the leaf drop.
Yeah, tropicals. If y'all know me, I don't deal with tropicals a whole lot. It's challenging in your environment here, in my environment in North Carolina. Challenging. We have to, overwintering becomes a problem. I don't like to deal with that because I'm so busy in the wintertime with wiring, working on trees. I don't want to work on them. But if you do, have tropicals, that whole fall transition is a whole nother story as far as, we're not shutting them down. They're going to a transition period to continue to grow throughout the winter time. So good luck with those guys. Good luck. So great questions on that. Let's get real quick. Okay, another issue that we're talking about that fall preparation. Talked about now fertilizing, a little bit of cutback on deciduous trees, fungicide, insecticide. Now is the time. Again, we're starting to kind of shut down a little bit, starting to get cooler. Ideally, insects shouldn't be much of an issue, but they often can be an issue. It's getting cold, they're looking for places to hide. Our trees are often an escape for them. So it's going to be really important as you start preparing your trees for winter to make sure you continue your fungicide insecticide regimen on into the fall time. I continue that, so I do a fungicide and insecticide spray about every 2 weeks on all my trees. And I do that from the very beginning of spring all the way into basically the dead of winter. So that's really important. Again, as we start heading into the fall time, we're losing leaves on our trees. That's a great time to be spraying, and if there's any insects, any fungus, good time to address that, get them into that winter storage, and we ideally don't have any flare-ups. Now, depending on how you store your trees throughout the winter, fungus and insects can be an issue. So dark places, you're putting your trees, fungus, it stays wet, fungus can flare up. Insects, a little bit warmer, if you're putting them in covered areas, spider mites, especially on junipers, can be an issue. It's still cold, but we have a warmer environment in there, they can flare up. So make sure you're continuing to spray your trees up until, again, basically Thanksgiving. And then in the wintertime, pay attention to your trees. One of the difficult things for me as a professional, it's different from you guys. You often think about winter as a reprieve from bonsai work. It's kind of you put your trees away and we'll see them again in the springtime. For me, wintertime is one of the busiest times. That's when we get in there and we're wiring our conifers, really working the trees. They've had a lot of growth throughout the year. That's our opportunity to kind of style them and get them looking good, so when they wake up in the springtime, they kind of fill in those shapes. So for you guys, don't forget about your trees throughout the winter. Be sure that you're checking on them. Be sure that you're watching out for fungus. Watching out for fungus on conifers, especially important. Make sure you're watching out for insects that are kind of hiding whatever storage you have. So as far as insecticide, fungicide goes, again, I'm spraying my trees with multiple different types of products. I'm often switching them about every 2 weeks. Also, I'm doing a granular insecticide and fungicide on my trees about every 60 days. So my main fungicide granular is Cleary's 3336. I'm doing that about every 60 days, and the fungicide is a Bonsai insecticide granular. I'm kind of mixing those together and applying them throughout the year. But still important to continue that up until the winter time. Yes, sir.
What's your application rate for Cleary's?
About like this. So we're talking about, Jesse and I were talking about this today too. Or no, I guess Tim was talking. I was talking about some. It's really difficult because that stuff is for lawns. It's for like yardage, square yardage, and obviously that's really difficult when we go to these size of trees. I'm basically doing on a tree like this, I basically have a teaspoon applicator, just a regular teaspoon, and I am kind of starting with that. So a tree like this, I'm probably giving between a half teaspoon and a teaspoon of sprinkle on that.
What is that? What is it? Which one is that? I'm sorry. Cleary's?
Cleary's. The Cleary's granular, but I also mix the. It's a fungicide. Cleary's 3336 granular fungicide.
I just didn't know what it was.
And I'm also using the Bonsai insecticide granular.
So you're not spraying fungicides?
I am doing that additionally, yes.
Are you wearing a respirator?
I'm not, my apprentice is.
I would like to think, yeah.
No,
So
you should be wearing a respirator, absolutely, when you're using that stuff.
Yeah.
At least be doing this.
No.
That's how I did it in Japan. Very bad. Very bad. But it's very dangerous, harsh chemicals. Please,
like Snoop
protect
Dogg said,
yourself.
if you smell it, you can inhale it.
That's right.
So if you're spraying something and you can smell it in the air, and it's
because
toxic,
it's in your nose.
That means you're breathing it in.
Yeah.
And this stuff is really bad for you. I'm not telling you.
Cleary's, you should
Put on the
probably
respirator.
partner with somebody on Cleary's because you get a big bag.
Yeah, so that bag, it's a big old bag of Cleary's.
Yeah.
I think it's about $100, $150 somewhere. That I have one of those bags, and I've barely even, even hundreds of trees that I've had,
Yeah.
I've barely made a dent in that.
Yeah,
So,
Christian and I
that's
were
something maybe the club, thinks about, providing for, getting everybody pitch in on a little bit, or you and a buddy get in and split it. Yes, sir.
With, so you're saying you're spraying every 2 weeks?
Yes.
Now, could you spray, like mix that into one sprayer?
Yep. So, great question.
Or do you have to wait till like one dries and then spray the other? Like, what is it ever
Great question.
too much to like
Yep.
throw on the tree?
So a couple of the products that I regularly use, fungicide, I use the Cleary's 3336 liquid. I use Mancozeb. It's a different type of fungicide. And I use Mancozeb, Daconil. So those are kind of the 3 quintessential fungicides I'm using throughout the year. And I will typically use 2 applications and then switch the product. So I'll use Cleary's for 2 applications. That's about 4 weeks. Then I'll switch it to Daconil. Then I'll switch it to the other one. So I kind of go back and forth to those. Then I mainly am using, one of the insecticides I'm using is Talstar. And then I'm using Malathion. I have one other one that I'm kind of experimenting with, but don't know how it's working yet. All of those products, the insecticide and fungicides, with all the research I've done, you can mix them just fine.
Okay.
Now there are certain products that you can use, often they're oil-based, that you cannot mix them together. So it's real important, whatever product you're looking at, make sure you read the label, because on the label it will say, do not mix this with X type of product.
Okay.
Or it's okay to mix it with this type of products. But as long as you're Daconil, Mancozeb, Malathion, Cleary's, all those fungicide insecticides are mixable. Yes.
Hey buddy, talk about lime sulfur real quick.
Lime sulfur, that's a difficult topic for me. In that we just in Japan, so lime sulfur often that is a mix that we will use as a dormant spray. We get our trees put up in the wintertime and do a lime sulfur spray on them. We didn't do that at Suzuki's in Japan, and therefore I just haven't done that. I still tend to rely on my generic insecticides and fungicides to spray in the wintertime. Caveat, well, with that being said, it is okay to do lime sulfur. I've got plenty of clients that use lime sulfur dormant spray essentially in the winter times.
I do it on the black pines.
The only, basically the only issue you're going to run into that, horticulturally just fine. Aesthetically, it's going to leave that residue on it because the lime sulfur on your needles, on the trunks, on your pots. That's probably why we didn't do it in Japan.
Yeah.
But it is okay to use that. It's just I don't practice using that. Nothing wrong with doing it though.
Too.
Say that again?
Stains your driveway.
It sure does,
Yeah.
yeah. Man, it stinks, man. It just stinks.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about that you're doing the insecticide and the fungicide together, are you mixing them in the same sprayer at the same
Correct.
time? Okay.
So I do a backpack. We do a backpack, 4 gallons, and I'm putting both of those products in just one insecticide and just one fungicide. But I'm mixing those together, and then I go through and do my spray around the garden.
Now, is it better to do that when the soil's dry or wet? Is that
Good
better
question.
or what?
Good question. So with spraying insecticide, fungicide throughout the year, probably first and foremost, the most important thing you want to think about is temperature. If you're doing that spring, really summertime, if it's really hot, once it's in the above 80, I don't want to spray my trees with that. So in the summer times, I'm often doing that very early in the morning or later in the evenings when it's cooled down. Once you get into the fall time, early spring, temperatures are fairly mild. You can do it basically any time of the day. Wait a second. What'd you say? Say that question again.
I didn't know if it mattered whether the
Oh,
soil
dry,
was
okay.
wet or dry. Like, what's the?
So one of the things we like doing is I will often, when I am preparing to spray my trees, I'll go through the whole garden and we'll water them like normal, but I'll also hose down the trees so they're slightly wet. Then I give it a little bit of time. I don't want them dripping wet, but I don't mind them. I like them to actively be a little bit wet. That when I spray, it kind of, the way water and everything works, it spreads through it. Better than if it's dry, it tends to be more splotchy. So I like it slightly wet. It's a great question.
How many trees do you have in your?
Too many.
No, I'm serious.
I'm serious too.
Well, I've got 1,200. How many do you have?
How many do you have?
1,200.
Yeah, it's way too many.
Well, I'm in business.
I am too. It depends on, it depends on what you're talking about. I have, hundreds of whips, little cuttings and stuff. Refined bonsai have hundreds and hundreds. If I were to add up, and my mom has done it before, every single tree in a pot, over 1,000. But again, a lot of them are just little, just little whips growing out that, little twist in it. I don't consider that a bonsai technically yet, so I don't count that often. But refined bonsai or collected trees or works in progress, hundreds and hundreds. 1,200 is too many.
Why use Satsuki?
That's 1,200 too many. I'm joking with you. I'm joking with you.
I've had as many as 4,000.
That's a lot. That's a lot. There's a lot of trees.
That's when I was younger and your age.
That's when you're talking about numbers of trees, it's how much time and dedication can you really give to each one.
Right.
If you've got 10,000 trees and you take perfectly good care of all of them, great. If you got 10,000 trees and you're only taking care of one of them, those other ones are suffering. It's kind of a waste. So yes sir.
So could you speak generally about if you had perfect control, what temperature you would want over the winter?
Oh, for my trees?
Yeah.
Good
for
question.
trees. And
Like
then
winter storage and
what would you tolerate before you're like, oh man,
Okay,
I gotta,
yeah.
I gotta.
So that's real important. We're thinking about, as we talk about that, let's get into how we physically store our trees. So remind me of that. A little bit of that question. So we're talking about how cold should your trees get? Ideally, how cold do we want our trees to get? A lot of the biggest issue with that is how refined is your tree. If you have just a little nursery stock or just little growing whips like this pine right here, this little guy, I wouldn't care if it gets below 0 easily. It's going to probably be just fine. It's a young tree. Once we start getting really refined trees, especially with deciduous trees, a lot of small ramification on it, the colder it gets, the more likely those little tinier branches are going to get frozen quicker and quicker and start dying off. So, for me, the zones I think about a little bit is I like trees that are a little bit more refined, a little bit more finished. My favorite trees, my most valuable trees. Once we get into that 36-degree temperature, that's nice for them. I like that. Once we start getting into the low 30s, they're getting cold and frozen. I want them all my hoop house. That's kind of the zone I like that, around right at freezing in my outside. My hoop house, it's going to stay, it's just a plastic hoop house. It's going to stay 5 degrees or so colder or warmer inside there. So 30 degrees outside, probably about 35 degrees inside. Start getting down to that high 20s, that greenhouse is probably going to be getting close to frozen. So I don't mind that a whole lot with, most of the trees that I have in my hoop house. There are many times that it gets down to freeze and I go in there and touch them and those root balls are frozen. Now, I also have space heaters, or I have kerosene heaters I put in there. So once the outdoor temperature gets into that mid 20 degrees outside, I'm turning those on, knowing that inside it's probably going to be close to freezing, and then as it drops through the rest of the night, then with those space heaters and the kerosene heaters, it's providing some warmth. So most likely inside it's getting and staying close to about 30 degrees. If you're outside, it can be very difficult. As you start progressing your bonsai collection, start getting more and more valuable trees, more refined trees, especially in this environment, overwintering them outside can be pretty bad. Because we've got really nice trees, they're going to get frozen, it's going to get really cold, going to get snow on them. That's not the perfect protection for the trees. So in this environment, once y'all start getting into those mid-20s, which happens fairly regularly, your trees outside can start suffering if they're more refined. Even though less refined ones, but we tend to be okay with that because they're still works in progress. So once we get to that mid 20 degrees, that's when nicer trees, put them in your garage if you got them outside, taking extra precautions with them at that point. Once you start getting that, and in the wintertime, along with that, specifically the temperatures, trees still need water in the wintertime. So don't put your trees up and forget about them for the springtime, because there are going to be many days, especially with this changing climate, where we have really cold spells, but then we get up into 60, 70 degrees, though trees start to dry out a little bit, they still need a little bit of water. Now, you need to be really, really, really paying attention if you're watering your trees over the next 24 hours, or we getting back down to those sub-freezing temperatures. That's when we'll get pots busting. That's when we'll get roots desiccating and drying out because that water's freezing. So really pay attention when you're watering through the wintertime. What's the next 24 hours, 48 hours look like? If it's going to be freezing, probably need to skip that watering. If you got a couple places, a couple times where it's like, all right, this next week we're going to be fairly mild. Make sure you're watering your trees a little bit. Yes, sir.
So one of my favorite things is snow because it's self-watering and it kind of protects it a little bit.
Well, when snow's sitting on the pots, it's not melting; it's just frozen.
Yeah.
So as it melts, it does get in there. So if you know we're going to get some snow, like you got forecast and say, all right, we're expecting a foot of snow in the next week. I'm still probably going to water my trees those few days before that to make sure they're good, knowing that the next week it's going to be completely frozen and that water that's in the soil is going to be frozen. So those roots aren't going to be wet. They could desiccate. But having snow on top of it does insulate a little bit.
Do you shade cloth your hoop house?
In the wintertime?
Yeah.
No. I just so it's not a clear plastic. It's more of a milky plastic.
White opaque.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, yes, sir.
How do you keep your hoop house from being too wet?
During the wintertime, having the heaters throughout the night, that's going to dry things out a little bit. And also during the days when I'm paying attention to the weather, I like to open up so I get air circulation in there, and that helps things dry out. So this will kind of get to one of the topics that's a little bit difficult for you guys, is how do you go about storing your trees for the wintertime? What do you guys do? I know, Mike, you got a nice little, you got a greenhouse or cold frame, you got a cold frame in the ground to store them. Some people, Tim, I know you brought your trees in the house on a daily basis, or not in the house, but in the garage, you're shuffling in and out. What do other people do? What do you do?
Deciduous is in the garage because it doesn't need any light.
Yep.
And it's attached to the house so it doesn't get stupid cold.
Yep.
All my pines are in the hoop house under the deck.
Okay.
So.
What does everybody else do? Any other things? Yes, sir.
Depending on how lazy I'm feeling and how big the tree is.
That's a big issue.
And stuff, yeah. Either it goes inside the garage,
okay,
or I leave it out, cover it with some leaves,
okay,
check on it,
okay,
maybe cover it with the tarp if it gets really cold.
Okay.
Deciduous in a cold frame.
Cold frame?
Conifers, area of mulch.
Okay. Mulching?
Yeah.
Alright, so you're mulching trees in, huh? Alright, anybody else mulching trees in? Oh, a lot of people mulching. Alright. Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, well, let's talk about that. What is wrong with mulching your trees in?
Ouch.
Anybody, any issues that we might think about?
Vermins.
Do it? Vermins?
Yeah.
They love in the mulch, don't they? We don't like them in our pots and our trees, do we?
That's a problem.
What else?
Making sure you can still see the soil surface and monitor whether it's drying or not.
So if we're complete covering up all our soil, which we already know is pretty expensive, so we're putting mulch in it, I'm not a fan of that. But you're not going to see, you're putting leaf and debris over it. One of the things you might want to do, if you are doing that, which I would not recommend, but if you are doing that, periodically, kind of pull it away on nicer days.
That's why I like leaves,
yeah.
actually.
So you kind of pull it easy.
It's very easy
It is
to
easy.
move some dry leaves.
Yeah. So for me, yes, sir.
What about just for my guy who just bought a house and I'm probably going to build a cold frame here in the next month or so, but it's on rock.
Okay.
So like putting just a layer of like leaves, not to bury them, but just to keep them off like the cold rock with mulch, just to kind of.
Okay, that's not a bad idea. You might also recommend doing just some like weed fabric down there, black. It's going to conduct a lot of heat, so it's going to keep things a little bit warmer.
Sure.
So we'll get back to like the covering your trees up with mulch. I'm not a fan of that because especially what we often will do, what I often see people do is we go out to our yard, we have maybe a little vegetable garden type bed. We kind of pull that soil away, drop our trees in there, cover them up a little bit. So what's happening is now we're creating a whole new environment for that root system. Now it has this very granular, ideally good bonsai soil in there, very granular, and then we're covering it up with mulch and debris, so it's not going to be drying out the same way. You also, again, one of the things we use granular, the lava akadam and pumice soil in our trees to grow, we don't want all that organic debris in there clogging it up. So as soon as you start putting mulch and debris over there, it's going to get in your soil and start to mess it up a little bit. And it can, if you just have it over there all winter, could cause some issues. So I tend not to like to do that. If you have to mulch your trees in, what I recommend in those instances is create your little hole that you're going to set your tree in, and put a layer of rock under there. That way, when it does get wet, when it rains, when you're watering your trees, at least that water has a place to seep out into. Put it right on top of mulch, it's probably just going to sit in that pot and cause issues, whether it's freezing or root rot. So give it a place to drain out a little bit. And then as you're actually covering up the sides of your pots with that, try to avoid going on top of the soil. Do it all sides around, and it's going to be fairly similar to any tree on the ground, where trees, they're kind of covered up on all sides, but the top's still exposed to some of the environment. That's going to help trees dry out, and you'll be able to pay attention to the soil better like that. Yes, ma'am.
So you're saying, so like I had a layer of rock, but I put a thin layer of mulch and just kind of squishle it in.
So you put the rock and then mulch on top of that, and then the pot?
Yeah, I put the mulch to keep it warmer than the rock.
So one of the things, again, yes, I would not recommend that. I would just go straight to the rock, because that's going to give it the water a place to drain out into. Once you get your tree on top of that, you get mulch and whatever you're putting around that, the rock's not going to really stay cold. It's actually going to be, a little bit more warm under that. So you shouldn't have I don't think you should have to worry about rock causing things to be more cold.
And so I
it's
don't
covered up.
need
The mulch on top of that. So just
I thought that the plant's just set on top of the mulch. I thought that, I could see it, there's no mulch on top of my pots.
Okay, that's good.
I could see that it's watered, and I thought that the water would just go down, but you're saying mulch is not a good.
Yeah, often mulch is, it's going to be really compact and it's going to stay wet under those areas. So when it's right directly under your pot, it's not going to seep out as if you had layers of rocks in there. At least then it has a place to drain that water out of. Yes, sir.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So we're going to transition to
okay.
looking at this.
I've got a 5-minute question.
Okay. All right, good.
So I bury my pots in pea gravel.
Okay.
Okay, they're flush with it.
Yeah.
I've been putting mulch on top of those, but I do not cover the top at all. I have about a 4-foot windscreen.
That's good.
All the
Yeah.
way around to stop any wind.
So you're still dropping it in rock or mulch?
Yeah, it's dropped right into pea gravel.
That's fine.
Okay.
Again, the most important thing when you're big.
I don't need any mulch on top of that, though. I can leave the.
If you also have that windscreen around there, yeah, you should be fine. The trees are gonna be just fine with that.
It does get down to like 4 degrees.
I'd rather do that because it's a mess trying to take all the mulch.
You also have to remember these trees they live outside. We live outside our unit. They can take the cold. They can take freezing. I've had trees that have gone freezing for weeks on end. They can take it. So don't baby your trees. Let them kind of tough it out. The survival of the fittest a little bit with these guys. But yeah, so the main issue I have, if you're going to bury your trees, try to put a little drainage layer essentially under your pot instead of them putting them right on top of mulch or dirt in the ground. Try to have a little bit of drainage layer.
Mine are set, it's about a 6-inch bed of pea gravel.
Yeah.
And so most of them are setting up to a 3 inch.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I usually put my trees in milk crates and pack mulch around it.
Okay.
And then throw them in an attached shed and just kind of use it for shoving around. And we decided that putting all that mulch around them, around, is just a waste of time and makes it heavier.
Yeah. I have gone, so North Carolina, I'm in the foothills of the Appalachians. I've got plenty of times where we're getting down, low 20s into the teens. I have quite a few trees just sitting on the ground, just sitting on pots, just sitting on the ground. They do just fine. One of the things I think we do is baby our trees through winter a little bit much. So don't be afraid to let these, again, the biggest issue you're going to run into is if you've just recently watered your trees and it gets down to those temperatures and bust your pots. So just prepare for that. But again, I've had many trees every single year. I definitely have a hoop house, but that's only for 30% of my collection. The rest of the collection, they just sit outside all winter long. In fact, there's only certain instances that I will take them and put them off the bench and on the ground. That's when we're getting down into the 20s, the low teens. Other than that, they're just sitting there and they do just fine. Never had any issues with a plant dying or had a pot bust 1 or 2, but that was probably my fault from letting it stay a little too wet. Yes, ma'am.
I have seedlings that I started, Rocky Mountain Pine. They're young, less than a year old. Can they go out in the same way that we were just talking about, as long as there's a windbreak?
Yeah, they'll be just fine. They grow in the Rocky Mountains. They're not going to be as cold here as they will there. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they should be. So basically then, when we talk about that cold temperatures, I'm keeping a lot of my conifers outside And that's especially important because, the more we protect those with these, variable winters that we're having, I want them to get completely cold and shut down. If you protect them a little bit too much, then you run the risk, the roots are a little too warm, they wake up, and it's still cold. So my suggestion to you guys would, don't baby them as much as you think you have to. They're really strong trees, they can make it through this stuff. If you have any problems, come talk to Nate. And he'll any other final questions? Okay, so really the most important thing, yes, yeah.
It's all right. It might be too long.
Ask it.
We talked about Japanese maple fall work and stuff, and we didn't really get into conifer fall work.
Okay, so conifer, I'll real quick go over. Basically, with conifers, the biggest thing we should be doing at this time of year, we've had really nice, strong growing seasons. Junipers, our trees have gotten really, really full. Junipers, hinoki, cryptomeria, basically most conifers other than pines. We've got really full canopies, ideally. They've grown really strong throughout the summertime, heading into the fall. Fall time work on those types of conifers, cleaning them out, thinning them out, opening them up. So as we go through those winter months, we don't have these really tight canopies that can encourage fungus and or insects. So cleaning them out, opening them up, kind of getting rid of that weak foliage. So springtime, they wake up and they're ready to go strong. Pines are a very big different story. Depends on, did we decandle them, did we not decandling them? But in general, this time of year, they've had their nice growth all throughout the year, we're getting down into needle pulling. So pulling needles, depending on how strong the candles are, down to a certain number. This is a whole different topic that we've had different sessions on to discuss. Needle pulling techniques, that's something we can search on. If you guys follow any other professionals on their content, there's often needle pulling is a very important task that they talk about. So in general, conifers, cleaning them out, thinning them out, opening them up so throughout the wintertime they stay healthy and we're getting plenty of circulation through that canopy. That's probably about the most important thing. And junipers. Junipers, cleaning up the live vein so they don't have the flaky bark all over them. A lot of times flaky bark, that's where you're going to get spider mites hiding throughout the winter times. So cleaning up is going to keep them healthy. That was real quick. Conifer talk. Sorry.
Are you wiring juniper already? Or
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. Fall or the winter time is a very, very busy conifer work time. Basically, that's the best time to wire trees. Now, again, we talked about if you're wiring trees, putting heavy bins on them, they need to be protected from the winter cold months. But yeah, it's a very active time, wiring, setting them, getting ready for the springtime so they kind of grow into those new shapes after we've trimmed them back and they've had the whole growing season. Winter times where we get that little reprieve to, all right, let's get ready for the next stage. So I would say then the most important things, continue to fertilize, continue to spray. Trees aren't done yet. We still got a couple months to go. Keeping them healthy and happy. Most important deciduous you can think about is Japanese maples, cutting them back this time of year. Any other questions? Good on that? If you have any other questions, email me.
Yeah, so we're going to